Well, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Reality Halfway House. Today we're going to be talking about the Schumann Resonance and its impact on the Earth, on humanity, and maybe even yourself. I don't know. It seems like my For You page is just riddled with people saying, man, what is going on? I'm exhausted. My ears are ringing. I can't seem to catch up on anything. So we're trying to find a culprit for that. And maybe, just maybe, the Schumann Resonance is to blame. We are caught between worlds. This is the Reality Halfway House. I'm your host, Jones Nelson. So today is the inaugural episode, and I wanted to take just a real quick moment to just kind of introduce myself and kind of talk about what this podcast is hoping to accomplish. And then we'll get into the Schumann Resonance, which I think dovetails nicely with really kind of kicking off this podcast, because I feel like, and I could be wrong, because I am certainly not the not the most intelligent guy in the room. I'm just trying to be observant. But it seems like the Schumann Resonance could certainly explain how we're transitioning from point A to point B. So this podcast, the Reality Halfway House, what does that even mean? Okay, well, first and foremost, to back up a little bit, I have worked in radio as a disc jockey and on-air personality for almost the last 30 years. I've been in radio for about 28 years. And I'm on the air here in Alabama, northern Alabama, and have worked all over the country at radio stations. And the thing is, I feel like a podcast for me was just kind of the next logical progression. And I've started or tried to start podcasts for a while now, for the last several years, but it's been one of those things where it's like, man, what am I going to talk about that hasn't been, done to death? But as I certainly enjoy a good podcast and video podcast or vlog or whatever they're called, the thing that I have found is that, different personalities, I really just am more receptive of, so there's certain people that it's like, man, I just really love listening to them for that, or I love listening to them for this. And I was like, maybe that's just how this goes down. This is an opportunity for me to be able to kind of go through and be just another voice that, maybe you'll resonate with. So that's kind of the idea here. And with respect to the whole Reality Halfway House and how we came about that, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's the 2012 thing, the Mayan calendar, or the COVID debacle, but everything has just felt off, And I know I talk to people over and over. Of course, the economy's bad, and every day costs $250. Like, if you go out to the store, it's bananas out there, right? So, but everything has felt off. Whether it's Mandela effects, whether it's just feels like time speeding up. I mean, it's just everything feels off. And I saw a video the other day, and a guy was saying, he's like, we are living in hell, literal hell. It is hell on earth. And, I can neither validate or confirm his claim there. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that per se, but it is one of those things where it definitely doesn't feel great. I saw another email or video the other day, and the guy was like, this life could have been an email. And I just, at the end of the day, I just feel like we're in this weird purgatory. It's like we have this remembrance of a life that used to exist that felt quote unquote normal. And now we're living in this hellish landscape to where it's like we have to fight to survive for everything. And I'm not alone here. I work 2 or 3 jobs, just to keep a roof over my head, barely. And it seems like more and more people that I speak with are doing the exact same thing. It's like I'm trying to remember the last time I had a weekend, So part of this podcast is really just kind of a cathartic outlet that allows me to be able to go through and to kind of discuss things that are just kind of weighing heavily on my mind, because I'm talking about it anyway. I might as well go ahead and get in front of a microphone, which I have been since I was 15 years old. So this is just like my happy place, if you will. So we are caught between worlds. We're caught between this old world that we knew, this new world that we're going. We're in this purgatory. We're in this like weird transitional piece. We are in this reality halfway house. And so that's the kind of things that we're going to be talking about, kind of the world of the esoteric. We're going to be looking at kind of current events and what's happening as we do make that transition, because obviously in the political landscape, we're seeing a lot of big changes that are rolling out that are impacting us on a day-to-day, that are impacting our future and our children's future. So we're going to be getting into that. I'm from Roswell, New Mexico, born and raised. So, of course, we got to throw some aliens in there. And my recording studio is Alien Sasquatch Studios. So, there's going to be some of that in there as well. So at the end of the day, that's what we're going to be covering. It's going to be a large swath of information, hopefully to keep you entertained, hopefully to open up your mind and kind of expand your thoughts and perceptions a little bit. A big, huge, gigantic shout out to one of my favorite podcasts of all time, Mysterious Universe. It has since changed hosts, but the original host for like 18 years or however long they did it was Benjamin Grundy and Aaron Wright. And, I really attribute a lot of my kind of awakening process, or just even my mindset today on those guys and the amazing podcast that they do. I think they were doing another podcast for a while called Inescapable. I'm not sure if they're still on the air with it or if they're taking a break with it or not, but phenomenal. If you ever get a chance to go check them out, they're super groovy. So let's get into the topic of today, and that is, what is the Schumann Resonance? I'm really doing this for me more than anything else. So if you're looking for a super like in detail, like defined, getting into all the nooks and crannies, this is not the episode. However, I do have an episode that I will link to in the show notes, and we're going to be looking at snippets today. The professional geophysicist Stephen Burns actually did a video called The Secrets. Let's see. It's called the Everything We Know About the Schumann Resonance, the Most Important Thing You Never Heard of. And I think it's a great video from start to finish, and I will link to it in the show notes so that you can go watch it for yourself. He gets into all of the nooks and crannies as he's a very, very detailed, very intelligent geophysicist. I've actually seen him pop up in my feed just here recently as he's been discussing earthquakes and other things going on as our world, again, continues to get stranger and stranger. I think last week there was like 350 earthquakes in California in like one day, if that makes any sense. And so he said in one of the other videos that I watched that the geophysicists are keeping a very close eye on it. They're keeping a very close eye on Yellowstone and so forth. Again, this is that weird transitional piece from this world that we used to know that was more or less quote unquote stable to this like post-COVID world where it's like, what's even happening? What's even going on? So we're actually going to get into some of that too. It's kind of interesting. But I wanted to start first on kind of a grounded level before we kind of went off the beaten path a little bit, and to check in with a scientist, with a geophysicist, to kind of give us an explanation about what the Schumann resonance itself actually is.
So let's start with, what are the Schumann resonances? Schumann resonances are extremely low frequency standing waves of light energy that are naturally resonant with the Earth because of her physical dimensions.
So again, I thought that was pretty interesting. So the Earth itself has got these frequencies that is kicking out, and if you actually go into watch the video long form, he really gets into it. But the Earth itself ultimately is going through and is kicking out a resonance, like a resonance, a frequency. So not dissimilar to like if you hit a bell and the bell kicks out a frequency, right? I've worked in radio for 28 years, and if you see those giant towers just all over the landscape, they kind of the grandfather to the cell towers that we see today. But the radio towers are also kicking out these frequencies, and we've got frequencies going out everywhere, from your cell phone to your Wi-Fi to everything. These frequencies are going on, and the Earth itself has actually got this frequency that is kicking out, and it's frequencies. It sounds like there's different layers. And if you've ever seen somebody show a graph and actually in a video coming up, you'll see it actually in the bottom portion of the video. The Schumann Resonance has got this like waveform-based graph. Now, I'm an audio engineer. I'm in my studio. I'm very familiar with waveforms, transients, editing. Gosh, I've spent thousands of hours, editing audio. I'm very, very familiar with waveforms. So when I saw or when I've seen videos of the Schumann Resonance, it was always one of those things that was like vaguely familiar because it again looked somewhat familiar with what I was used to with respect to like normal waveforms and so forth. But what it's supposedly or purportedly picking up is actually the Earth itself, which just blows my mind because it's like, how are you picking just that up versus like the cell towers versus the radio towers versus the fill in the blank? So it's really interesting to see how that works. He goes into that more in his video. He gets granular on like what they're looking for in the different frequency ranges. What I was more interested in is how it's impacting us because, there's a lot of scuttlebutt all over the internet about, like Wi-Fi frequencies and how those are impacting our brains and cell phone signals and how the EMFs that those are kicking out are impacting us. I did a little experiment a few weeks ago where I actually went and turned off our Wi-Fi router before we went to bed. And you can say, oh, this is Jones. You're being, so tinfoil hat. But I turned it off, just to see. And not only did I sleep better that night, but both of my kids woke up and they said, man, I slept so incredibly well last night. I don't know why. I have got the best sleep that I've had in like days. That's crazy. I said, well, I turned the Wi-Fi off last night. And they said, what are you talking about? And so it's interesting because we're bombarded with that in our houses every day. We're bombarded that with our cell phones and radio signals and 5G and just everything else. And now you've got all of those signals are now competing with that natural Earth frequency. And so I'm like, well, so what's happening if we're in this weird transitional point, right? Because I mean, I don't think I'm alone in my synopsis there. I think that we're in this weird spot. I can't put my finger on it. I can't tell you what it is exactly, but I can tell you that we're in this weird transitional point. And what is it? Is it that the frequency of the Earth itself is being blocked by all of these other frequencies? Are these other frequencies going through and impacting us, and that's what we're feeling? Is the frequency of the Earth itself actually shifting? There's a lot of people that say, hey, the Earth itself is actually going through like a pole shift, like a magnetic pole shift. And so is that impacting what's happening with the Schumann resonance? Again, like I said, I don't purport to have all the answers there, but it does seem as though we are in some form of transition. And so as a result, it's going to push us in a direction that, we're in this like forced evolution, if that makes any sense. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm making sense there or not. But I thought that was really interesting because ultimately down the road, it does seem to be affecting people. And I found another video here that I've seen so many of these. I was trying to find like a good example to just kind of support what I was saying, but I thought that this was interesting. And again, I'll link to this in the show notes.
People who are saying that the Schumann resonance is off the scale. Normally it's 7.83 cycles per second, which is the heartbeat of the Earth, which is why we should walk barefoot. It grounds us. And then
I thought that was interesting. He calls it the heartbeat of the Earth, which I thought was pretty cool because if our Earth is alive, and some people say, whoa, man, hey, why would you go down that road? Well, actually, check it with Dolores Cannon a little bit later. If you know her, you'll know where we're going. She talks about the Earth being alive. But if it has a heartbeat, then it would stand to reason that there would be frequencies. If you've ever seen an EKG, that's your heartbeat. It's a frequency that's coming out. If you've ever looked at a time lapse of the seasons, I didn't think about it until just a second, but if you ever just Google a time lapse of the seasons and it shows the snow melting and coming back, it literally looks like the Earth itself is breathing. So it's very interesting. Dolores Cannon actually says that we're like, and Joe Rogan actually corroborates this. He says we're like fleas on a dog, and I think he said we're like mold on a sandwich. on this earth, and it's like it's existing whether we want to exist or not. I just thought that was interesting, the heartbeat of the earth.
And then we are in sync with the pulse of the earth, the heartbeat of the earth. The sun has been doing strange things, and there are other planets that are affecting our solar system, and all of those create new energies, which drives the Schumann resonance bonkers. Some have measured it at 11 and 16 and higher cycles per second, you see? So that must have an effect on people, some more so than others. Some don't feel anything at all.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point too, because it does seem like in this transition phase that we're in, that humanity is starting to divide in a weird way. I can't quantify it, but I can walk outside and I can interact with people, and it's like you've got a certain group of people that seem like they're more aloof, and you've got some people that seem like they're just more like trying to cling to some sense of normality. In other words, I hate to use the terms awake and asleep, but it's like you've got a group of humanity or a piece of humanity that is waking up to something, whatever that is. I'm not trying to say that I know. And you've got another group of people that are staying asleep. Now, what does that mean? You know, you've got this whole trope about there being NPCs, the non-player characters out there that are not even real human beings, and that we're in some sort of a simulation. I mean, Elon Musk himself has said that he believes that we're in a simulation. So what does that mean? I don't know, but it definitely does seem like that whatever this change is, whether it's Schumann resonance related or not, that it is causing some sort of a split or a division and affecting people differently. In other words, look at the Mandela effects. You know, you've got whole swaths of people that say, oh, I remember this, like the Berenstain versus the Berenstein Bears, you know, Ed McMahon and Publishers Clearinghouse, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's so many different examples of those. And some people are like, yeah, I don't remember that at all. And some people like will die on that hill. That this is absolutely one of those things that occurred. Again, the Bible talks about this as well. I don't have the scripture just right in front of me, but the Bible talks about the division of the wheat and the tares, or the sheep and the goats. There is a division that happens, especially as you start to get to more of kind of an end time situation. And, you know, it's not just me that has had that thought that we're getting close. It's constantly the proverbial cardboard sign, the end is near, and it feels as though like we may be coming to the end of something. I thought it was interesting. Stefan Byrne actually commented on how this will affect people depending on their receptivity to some of these frequencies. I thought that was interesting.
Field. And so here we have some data showing two different subsets of people. There are those that have a high affinity for the Schumann resonances, then also people that have a lower affinity for the Schumann resonances.
So what is that? How is it that some people are more affected by this Schumann resonance and other people are just like less affected or not affected at all? Again, does this go through and give validity to this idea of there being non-player characters, these NPCs? You know, it's interesting. In the Apocrypha, which are the extra books not included in the biblical canon, the 66 books, in the Apocrypha, I believe it's in the book of Jubilees or the book of Jasher, I forget, either one. Both, if you have not read them, they're something else. And you can come, I mean, there's going to be people come after me saying, oh, here we go. He's getting into the non-canonized form of scripture. Here's the reality. It gets into some crazy stuff in there. One of these days, I wasn't planning on getting into it today, but we will definitely get into some of these on some future episodes because it's immensely fascinating. But it discusses what we would determine or what we would coin Cabbage Patch Kids today. It discusses them. I believe it's in the book of Jasher, if I'm remembering correctly. It gets into that sort of thing. Well, if you get into those types of things and you kind of go down some of those roads, it's like, are there people that are existing here that are either fragmented, they have some sort of a soul fragmentation. I mean, there's so many different areas that my mind wants to go with this. And I keep trying to pull myself back into this, like, okay, I got to stay grounded. I've got to have both feet planted firmly on the earth. But it's like, how is it that people are so different? Like, I mean, I know that we have different people, but it's not. And the thing is, it would be easy to say, well, it's a specific group. It's a culture that's doing it. Maybe it's a cultural thing that they're trying to cling to this, but it's not. You're seeing people from all walks of life, all races, all religions that are starting to kind of have a head on the swivel, whereas other people are existing. Again, if this frequency is impacting people, it's impacting them differently. So you've got some people that are affected by this and some people that aren't. And I said kind of jokingly just a second ago, it's like I'm trying to keep my feet firmly planted on the ground, but there's actually some validity to that as well. A couple of years ago, I forget who it was that I saw talk about this or that inspired this. This is probably 2 or 3 years ago. But they were really encouraging the act of grounding. It might have been Barbara O'Neill, if I'm remembering correctly. I forget. She's big in grounding. But grounding is this act of, just kind of pulling your shoes off and going and connecting with the earth. And supposedly what that allows you to do is it allows you to go through and pick up on these frequencies. I didn't realize at the time that it was the Schumann resonance or Schumann resonances that I was connecting with, or the heartbeat of the earth. But the grounding is supposedly allows you to go through and reconfigure. In essence, grounding, as I understand it, allows you to go through and to kind of decharge or recharge. And it's like we're electric beings. And so it's allowing you to go through and to take this electrical signal that you have built up in your body and discharge yourself while simultaneously like recharging your batteries. I was like, I don't know about any of this stuff, but I'll give it a shot. And so I started grounding on a day-to-day basis. And I'll tell you what, I don't know what it does. I'm not exactly sure. But after walking just barefoot in my yard for half an hour, I did it over the course of a few weeks. It's like by the time the half hour was over, I felt drunk. Like, and I'm not a big drinker in any stretch, but I would just be out there walking, and it's like my brain would do something completely. I just felt like woozy. That's the best way to describe it. So there's definitely something that happens. And STEFAN Burns actually talks about that and how potentially the Schumann.
One unique way that you connect with the Schumann resonances is through your feet, specifically your bare feet, because Schumann resonances propagate out of the ground surface. They exist as these natural electromagnetic vibrations in the ground surface because of the ionosphere and the electric currents that are pulsing through the ionosphere. They sometimes vibrate at Schumann frequencies, and that induces Schumann resonances in the ground surface at the same frequency. And so if you walk outside and you go to the park, for example, sink your feet into the grass, these Schumann resonances are naturally coming up, and they help to guide and regulate your biorhythms and your circadian rhythm. They are one of the master synchronizing geophysical energies that exist on our planet. Of course, the sun is hugely important as it relates to our circadian rhythm. You have light and then you have dark. That's very important as it relates to the production of cortisol and also melatonin, guiding our sleep-wake cycle. But Schumann resonances also guide our biorhythms. And so connecting to the Schumann resonances is very important for optimal health and wellness. And because they overlap with our brain waves, which we'll talk about more, and also our heart rhythms, they also are very important as it relates to optimal functioning, as it relates to our cognition, as it relates to our emotional awareness, our interaction with others, and so much more.
Yeah, I was blown away. And again, I'll link to that full video in the show notes so you can go through and see, because he gets way more in depth in all of that. It's such a good video. But I will say that my experience doing it, and I haven't done it as much as I probably should. I did it. I was pretty religious. Like every day for about half an hour, I would just go walk barefoot in my backyard, and there was a cognitive effect on me. Like I said, it's like I almost felt like I was drunk. After 30 minutes of just walking around the yard. I don't know why, but what I do find really interesting is, again, we are bombarded with all of these other frequencies. It's almost like we have this like frequency fog that's over the earth. And I feel like, we wear rubber-soled shoes. We don't go outside as much anymore. So we're missing out on this connection to the planet. And if it is truly going through and releasing these different frequencies, then these different frequencies are and they're supposed to help our bodies. It would stand to reason that we should be connected. I mean, if you follow the Bible and you go all the way back to Genesis, we're literally made from the earth. If you look, Adam is made from the earth. He was formed and molded out of the earth. So if we don't go and connect with it, then are we actually missing out on something that is crucial and necessary for us to be able to function? It's just kind of something to think about, some food for thought, because I know for me in particular, it did impact me. It did affect me. Now, of course, I'm nervous to deal with all the ticks running rampant. Apparently, they're chasing people, so walking around barefoot in the yard is definitely not one of those things today that I'm as interested in doing, which is a bummer because it does seem like we're missing out on something pretty significant when we do that. So I want to kind of change gears a little bit because we've looked at kind of some of the more scientific backings, and he goes way deeper in this too, by the way. He gets into like the different breakdowns of the frequencies and how they go through and they impact like your mental states. So like your different brainwave states. It's super cool. And I would encourage you to go check it out. Like I said, I'll link to it in the show notes. But I do want to kind of shift gears a little bit and kind of get into some more of the esoteric, because when it comes down to, I don't know how to put it. The world feels different, okay? It's one thing to quantify something, to look out and measure it. Like, for example, they can measure the Schumann resonance. They can see what frequencies it's putting out. But there's an intangible factor to this that I think most people can relate with, but that they can't quantify. We feel like something is different. We feel like something is off. Right? And I think that is the big thing here. And I know that, if you know who Dolores Cannon is, I mean, she is, or was, really big kind of in this movement of the earth is splitting and changing timelines and becoming something completely different. If you don't know anything about Dolores Cannon, I'd encourage you to look her up. I'm going to link to this video in the show notes. That kind of breaks down a little bit further what it is that's happening. But essentially, she's put forth, and it's not only her. There have been many other people that have put forth this notion. Even Jesus himself said, there's a new heaven and a new earth that are coming. And so it's like, well, what does that even look like? If you get into Revelation 22, it talks about the New Jerusalem coming on, and it's like it's a completely different environment from what we are experiencing at this moment. So is there validity to the fact that there could potentially literally be a splitting? Jesus did say, he said, look, there's going to be the separation of the wheat and the tares. Again, the sheep and the goats. There will be two women grinding at the mill, and then one will disappear, and the other be there. Is this the rapture? What is this? What is that part of the new earth transition? Do you see what I'm saying? These are all esoteric topics that we can't go through and quantify. I can give you biblical verses. I can show you videos, but it's like it's something that you feel. It's something that you can't quantify. And so I wanted to kind of play a couple of clips here from Dolores Cannon to just kind of give her take on it, because she does give you more of that esoteric and gives you something that kind of scratches the itch of the thing that you can feel but not quantify.
The entire earth is moving into another dimension. Another vibrations and frequencies of the whole earth are changing to what's called the new earth. And this is in the Bible, too, in the book of Revelation, when they talk about the new heaven and the new earth. It's just that it's happening right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because she's right. I mean, the Bible does talk about there's a new heaven and a new earth coming. I mean, even in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus said, he's like, on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, he's trying to go through and combine or aggregate the notion of the earth and heaven, right? And if you look, too, at the book of Genesis, you start off with Adam and the creation of Adam and Eve, right? They fall with the first sin, and then they get kicked out of the garden. And if you look throughout the entire canon, the entire canon is this like GPS roadmap of getting humanity from this fall from the garden, out of the garden, back into the garden. If you follow up at the end of the book of Revelation, you find that it's ending in the garden as well, if you kind of look at it. I'm not saying it's the Garden of Eden, but you have the tree of life in the beginning, and you have the tree of life at the end. It's like this weird, again, like a weird GPS rerouting of humanity back to grace and back to the garden. I just find that fascinating because, again, that's not something that we can necessarily quantify, but I feel like it's something that we as human beings kind of deep down feel and believe and know. I just thought that was interesting there.
See, it depends on what world do you live in.
Well,
but the old earth is where all of these things will be left.
what happens if you don't want the change? What happens if you want to live in this old world?
You'll stay with what you have created.
So where are you going?
I'm going with what's beautiful and positive.
Okay, so there's not people aren't leaving the planet as such, but there is a conscious
Two
shift.
planets. It's separating into two.
But I thought that's what you meant, yeah.
The old earth and the new earth.
Not a physical separation.
Yes. But you won't notice anything has happened.
And I, just as I was watching that again, and I watched it earlier, but going back to the garden, you almost see that exact thing back in the book of Genesis, where it talks about you have this Garden of Eden, right, where everything, it was more or less effortless. It was all provided. It was effortless. And then you have kind of this banishment from the garden, where you now have this other earth where everything has to be, cultivated through toil and suffering. It's this weird, like, separation, these two worlds, right? I mean, it seems like you can see that almost metaphorically speaking in the Old Testament. And then at the very end, you see again this coming back to this original earth, because things have been split apart. It's kind of like she talks about. It's like it's a dimensional thing, and it's again dimensions and all this other kind of stuff. It's so bizarre because we can't quantify that. We've got these UFO files coming out with Trump and everything like that, and it seems like there's interesting things that are in there that I won't touch on this episode, but we'll probably on future episodes. But it seems like the possibility for these dimensional shifts or dimensional changes are there. Like we just have to accept or open our minds enough to be able to see that. I just thought that was kind of interesting there.
Talking about, like, for example, like a dimensional shift. Some of us, we're not going to know the shift's happened.
Into another dimension. It's happening now. It started in 2003, and it's happening right now. We are moving into the new earth. And people don't even notice. It's not going to just be bam and you're there. It's a gradual thing. It's been happening.
Do you think people are going to are finding, should I say, this change quite testing right now?
Well, you're going through a lot of things to see. Main thing is getting rid of the karma. You're going through a testing time. Do you want to stay with the old earth? Do you want to stay on the wheel of karma? Or do you want to move on where there is no karma in the new earth? And where it's beautiful and wonderful. Is that what you want to do?
But is no karma going to make us spiritually grow?
It's more spiritual than you can even ever imagine. And many, many people are moving there. They're moving into it right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are going to come at me and say, Jones, what's up with the karma? You're talking about Jesus, and now you're talking about karma. Well, I all I know is that we are all imperfect people. That's what I know. I mean, all you got to do is go outside, and you'll notice that Not only are there imperfect people, but just have somebody cut you off in traffic and realize that you yourself are extremely imperfect as well. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. We're all imperfect. We all have this albatross of sin hanging around our neck. And until that albatross is removed, we're on this like quest to try to better ourselves as human beings. And I don't know what's happening. I just know that we are in this weird shift. We are in this weird transitional phase, as I've said 1,000 times today. This reality halfway house, as the show is so named, because it's like we're stuck. What is a halfway house other than a transition from prison back to the real world? Well, we've been enslaved by this world. I mean, you can say, well, we're not enslaved. We're free and we are open. We're like free range chickens. We have the ability to run around, but we're still in the coop. At the end of the day, we're still taxed on everything. We're still in this weird life, not dissimilar to the Israelites that you see in the Old Testament in the book of Exodus, where they're caught up for 400 years, enslaved in Egypt until finally God steps in and sets them free. And you see a lot of prophets today talking about how, at some point soon, there is going to be this Red Sea moment, this point of transition, this division, quite literally the same thing. The Red Sea, the old world divided so that the new world can be conquered or achieved. You had to divide the sea to cross from the old to the new. Maybe we're crossing through right now. Maybe the world was split and we're just in the middle. We're in the middle of the Red Sea, the proverbial Red Sea at the moment. I don't know. It's just something. I just know that since COVID, it's been a lot different. It's been a lot different indeed. It does feel like at some point we're trying to grasp or have words to be able to describe, kind of this world that we're in. And we might not until the transition has actually completed. Like it's hard to quantify something that is so intangible. I find myself walking around the house every day going, is today going to be the day that the Red Sea closes or the Red Sea opens? Is today going to be the day that God moves? Because it feels like he's fixing to do that. It feels like he's fixing to make a move, whether you believe in God or you don't. I mean, I feel like it's going to be a moment here pretty soon to where there's going to be no doubt one way or the other. And again, there's two types of people, just like STEFAN Burns was saying earlier. The resonance, the Schumann resonance goes through and affects people completely different. Some people it affects a lot, and some people are completely oblivious to it. But again, that's corroborated by what Dolores Cannon and a myriad of others have said, and that the Earth itself is potentially going through a big division, the splitting or the parting of the Red Sea. I don't know. It's a very interesting thing to think about. But I wanted to kind of close with this today because there's a lot of people, again, like I said on my For You page, I see reel after reel after reel. And of course today, when I'm trying to find said reels for my video today, they are nowhere to be found. My algorithm is fighting against me today, man. But I did find something on Ascension, symptoms, Now, this is kind of gearing more towards kind of the New Age perspective. And again, you're going to get people come after you. But I find it fascinating because I myself have experienced a lot of this along with other people. And you can say it's long COVID, or it's Hashimoto's, or it's Lyme disease, or it's, fill in the blank. There's so many different things. But I just thought this was fascinating. It's a little bit longer. I will link to it in the show notes so you can go see it for yourself, because there's a lot of different videos that kind of address this sort of thing. But I just wanted to kind of put it out there so you could see for yourself.
The current energies are totally off the charts, and it is causing a feeling of kind of pent up energy, anxiety, feeling restless. not being able to sleep or not being able to stay asleep. There are so many things that are happening right now. And
I'll
it's
say
like,
that.
I can feel this mild buzzing sound, like similar to what you would say tinnitus is. But for me, it's not that I have tinnitus. What it is like when you're having these experiences.
And I'll say this too, just to kind of hop in there. The frequencies themselves. I mean, think about being in front of a big symphony orchestra. What happens when they hit this? When they hit the gong or they hit the chimes, or when they start playing, you feel those frequencies, and it creates a buzzing. My family and I just went to go watch Jurassic Park at the symphony, and you can watch that movie at home, and you can listen to the soundtrack. But when you're in the room with that symphony, watching the movie at the same time, the whole the whole room vibrates with that symphony. You're feeling the soundtrack versus just listening to it. And so the buzzing that she's talking about, I think, resonates, because if we are, I mean, you can quantifiably measure this Schumann resonance, or the frequencies that are coming out. And if it's changing, then it seems as though we would be having, those things. And she talks about like ears ringing. Mine have been doing that all the time, out of nowhere. It'll start and stop. And I see that more and more from other people.
Experiences, it's tapping you into another dimensional realm of sound. You're actually tapping into beyond the veil and hearing frequencies that you normally haven't been able to hear in the past. So this means that your intuitive gifts and abilities are turning on in new ways. And these symptoms that we're having are all a process of the body calibrating to the new frequencies coming in. Because when we are receiving the downloads and the light codes that are coming in, our body is in a dense form, and with all of the things that we are still holding on to, any of the karmic patterns, the loops that we're in our mind, any of the stored emotions that have not yet been released, are dislodging and starting to dissolve. And so it is really shifting our internal state and causing these symptoms to occur. So know you are exactly where you were meant to be. All is well. Keep taking deep breaths, keep grounding in nature, keep regulating your system with the tools that you have in your toolkit.
Yeah. So I find it fascinating that one of the things that she describes on how to kind of mitigate some of these symptoms is to actually just go ground yourself. I do find that on a daily basis, or a daily, weekly basis, if I get overwhelmed or super stressed, that just taking a few mile walk out in the woods does seem like it helps quite a bit. I don't know why. Is it the frequencies? Does it have something to do with the trees? I have no idea. There's so much of this world that we don't understand, that I think sometimes the best thing that we can do is to just go back to the basics. Take the shoes off, go run through the yard. Go out and take a stroll through the woods. It's really bizarre, and I don't claim to have answered all of this. Again, like I said, I'll put all of these videos in the show notes, including the Stefan Burns video. It's over an hour. It is super in depth. He can get into all the logistics and the specifics as to what the frequencies are and what the Schumann resonance is. The big thing that I'll say is that I don't think that we can just look at it, though, through a scientific lens. I think it's easy for us to try to do that. My degree is in finance. I spent the better part of 20 years working in the Wall Street and the finance industry. So I'm very 1 + 1 = 2. It's that my tendency is to want to look at things through that lens of it's either black or it's white. But but with something like this, I think that we need to be very careful in our desire to want to do that, to want to put it into this, well, it has to be this box, because the world is bigger than that. I've been in church, most of my life, almost went into seminary years ago. And I feel like the church does the same thing. You say, whoa, Jones, be careful. Be careful now. You're attacking the church. I'm not attacking the church, but I do think that the church has a tendency to go through and go the opposite direction and to say, well, it's all this. And yet they throw the baby out with the bathwater sometimes. And I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying that I have seen it enough to where it's like, well, miracles happened back then, but they don't happen today because of this, that, and the other. And it's like, but wait a minute, hold on. I mean, to me, there wasn't any sort of an expiration date on the Great Commission. What happened? We're supposed to heal people and cast out demons and do all of those things. Jesus himself said, hey, all these things I'm doing now, you're going to do greater things than that. So at the end of the day, I just think it's we have to have an open mind with these topics. We can't just be black or white with it. I think we have to understand that God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and everything in between is this like very broad gradient, not dissimilar to the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is this big gradient that is really hard for us to define. It's really hard for us to go through and to say, well, it's all this, because you can map it out, you can put it in a grid or a graph, but how do you then go through and correlate that with how people are feeling? The anxiety, like how do you qualify that with the anxiety, or how do you say that they're even correlated themselves? I don't know. Are they? I don't know. I think that's one of those things that we're going to have to just kind of watch and see. And if we are in the end times, we may not have to wait very long. It may be one of those things that happens sooner than any of us may like. So there you have it. Well, this is the inaugural episode of the Reality Halfway House. Again, very first episode. I have no idea what I'm doing up to this point. Like I said, I've just been in radio for so long. It was like, it begs the question, what am I doing if I'm not making that evolution into some form of talk radio? Now, I don't know how this show is going to evolve. I think it'd be really cool to be able to get a co-host at some point. I'd like to start doing interviews. I've done so many interviews over the years in radio, and I really enjoy getting to do that. So if you enjoyed the show today, please give me a like and a subscribe. Like I said, this is the inaugural episode, the first episode. Hopefully many, many more to come. If there's something in particular that you'd like me to delve into or dive into and kind of put my spin on it, let me know in the comments. And I hope you have a blessed day.